Here's Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari in last year's race, and you can see pretty much like Lewis. Now, that's one of the reasons I've been saying for quite a while now that Charles is right up there with Lewis and Max in terms of technique. Obviously, all three drivers are at different stages of their careers, different experience lines, but nonetheless, you can see here that Charles got the car absolutely perfectly set up for the approach to turn 10. Let's compare that now with another shot of Valtteri Bottas. Poor Valtteri, I don't want to make too big a deal about it, but it's the most obvious comparison to make because we are talking about how well Lewis Hamilton gets the car through this piece of road. Here Valtteri's got the car in a slightly better shape in terms of its position on the track, but nonetheless locking the inside front. And that's because he's had to come from a much steeper angle. To get the car here, he's had to come from here, whereas Lewis comes from about here to get the car into that. That's why he's got more load in the car, more lateral load, and therefore that's why that left front is locking up. Now here's a nice image of Daniel Ricciardo leading Max in last year's race, and there you can see Daniel has got quite a lot of steering load in the car. He hasn't got the car straight and flat as Max has in that sort of Lewis-Hamilton area. Max is very, very near Lewis there. Daniel's got more of a curve to what he's doing, but he's pretty good. You've got to say he's pretty good. And a lot of that is due to Daniel's touch and feel. He's got a lot of finesse, and that's what makes him such a great racing driver. He's very, very good at feeling the surface of the road, although he's definitely got more curves and less linear aspects to his driving than, say, Lewis or Max or Charles. Max there, you see he's almost in the Lewis-Hamilton mode there. Let's take another look at Max. Not the best of photographs, but this is the best image I could find of Max on this section of road. And you can see there that he's in the corner, he's done the job, he's got the car stopped. Car looks very square, very flat. So I think it's a rule of thumb. Lewis, Max and Charles are going to be really good through there. Of course, they're going to make mistakes. Of course, there are going to be moments when they brake too late, when they don't get it quite right. But generally speaking, when either of these three drivers have an inside front lockup, it won't be as damaging to that section of road, their lap time or their speed on that section of road, as it would be for, say, a Roma or a Carlos Sainz. Now, all of these things I've been talking about with Lewis are not things that you learn, your engineers will tell you about, because we're talking about very, very subtle differences. And so far as the telemetry goes that Mercedes have, comparing Valtteri through that section of road and Lewis through that section of road, they'll be monitoring things like G-loading, obviously, where they apply the brakes, how hard they apply the brakes, minimum speed in 10, and maybe acceleration runs out of 10. They'll be looking at all those numbers. What they won't be looking at is exactly what I've just been talking about. Lewis running slightly wider on the apex, and then the way he's applying the brakes, getting the car lovely and flat and stopped before he gets into 10. There's another thing here that we should talk about, and that is that 10, of course, is a tight corner leading onto the long straight, which is why it is so important. But going into the next corner, 11, there is an overtaking opportunity there, but you've got to get a really good run on the car in front of you. That will happen. That will make Bahrain a relatively easy circuit on which to overtake if the car in front does bobble out of 10. If it has too much wheel spin, poor traction, get the inside run, and you've made the pass going into turn 11. So what I'm saying here is that if you are a driver with three cars behind you and your tires are starting to go off and you're wondering whether to come into the pits to change tires and want to make the stint run for another 4 laps, you don't want anyone to pass you. What you want to make sure of is that you do not have any issues coming out of 10. You've got to make sure that your exit from 10 is clean. Now you can do that in 2 ways. You can either brake much earlier for 10, go much slower through that kink and make sure the car gets stopped properly, or you can be Lewis Hamilton and you've got your slightly wider approach. Maybe you're feathering the throttle slightly as you're on the marbles. The car's in 6th, 7th gear. It's feeling pretty bad on the limit. But then you get the car nicely stopped. You haven't lost any speed relative to what you could be doing in that car at that moment with that grip level, and you got your clean exit. That is what being a great Grand Prix driver is all about. And that, I think, Lewis just felt. He felt it naturally from the first time he ever drove around that section of road in 2007, and he's retained it ever since. I've talked to him about it a few times and said, wow, I love watching you through that section of road. He said, oh yeah, it's a really good section of road, and I love it. But he doesn't go into any detail because I don't think he thinks about it in the detail that I've just been rambling on about. I think he just does it. And when somebody like me says, oh wow, it's amazing how you're missing the apex or moving the apex slightly to the right. He says, oh, am I? Oh, I didn't realize that. And I don't think we'll see very much of this on TV this weekend either, because on the onboards, there's no way you'll see it. The differences we're talking about are so small and the speeds are so high that there's no way in the world you'll see the difference between the way Lewis goes through that kink and the way Valtteri goes through that kink. And I don't think you'll see it from the external shots either, because past history will say that they're never in a position where you can actually see what the car is doing as it's coming out of that kink. They never have a camera lined up there. So I'm going to have to take my word for it. Great pictures from Peter Nygaard, but this is for me one of the greatest pieces of road, because it's got everything. It's got the importance of being really good through a quick corner, the importance of braking and being really good when the car's being stopped with lateral load in it. And then it's got the long straight to penalise you if you don't get it right. It's a little bit like that section in Russia, which I've talked about. I think it's turn 13, when they come through the left, fast left. It's the straight and it's the fast left, and they're braking into the tight right where Carlos Sainz had that big shunt a couple of years ago in the Toro Rosso. It's a little bit like that, except that that section of road doesn't have a long straight afterwards. So you can make a mistake there and maybe you run a bit wide or you lock up, but it doesn't really penalise you. The beauty of this, I say beauty, I mean, I'm the one not driving the car, but the beauty of this is that you get an enormous penalty or a bonus if you get it right. Penalty if you get it wrong. And that's why I love 9-10 in Bahrain.